That's the sound of the coffee pouring. Welcome to the Doctor's Brew. I'm your host, Dr. Abdulaziz Al Khayyat, and with us today is Fatema Kazem. Welcome, welcome.
Hi.
She's a 7th-year medical student studying at Kuwait University, and interestingly, she has a very active outside of medicine life. She is also a national figure skater, is that correct?
Yes.
Very exciting, very cool, very unique guest to have on today. Before we get into our topic, which is going to be about work-life balance, particularly in medical school, so a little throwback for you doctors out there and for you medical students, maybe something to tune into for some tips. Let's talk about something very, very, very important, our coffee today. Fatma, do you remember what's our coffee today?
A latte. But not a latte for you.
But not a latte, okay. So, crime number one against coffee. Latte, the coffee must be frothed.
Oh.
So we have an unusual coffee drinker with us today.
Delish.
But it's okay. We forgive her.
I'm trying something new.
Good.
At least.
Always try something new. Learn new skills.
Yeah.
Drink more caffeine. No. Today's coffee is from HMC, which is down the road from us here on the Gulf Road, one of their branches. I always drink their coffee, and I like brewing it here whenever I'm working. So, that is good coffee. One last sip before we get into it. Get caffeinated, get ready. So let's get into our topic today. We are going to be talking about work-life balance, particularly in medical school. Now, everyone knows that we suffer from burnout, and we've touched on this topic many, many times in this podcast because I think it's really important. And it's a subject of how to balance your life. And with someone who has such a unique outside of medicine experience, I think there's one of the best people we can have here today is Fatma. And she's going to give us a unique perspective in the fact that she's a medical student, right?
Yes.
So as being a medical student versus a doctor, it's amazing how just those few months when you start working, you forget a lot of the lessons that you picked up during medical school. And I'm a firm believer of learning from your colleagues. So like medical students, listen to medical students. Trainees, listen to trainees. Let's dive in here. Fatma, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor. So I'm Fatma. I'm a 7th-year medical student at Kuwait University, and I'm a figure skater with the Kuwait Winter Games Club here in Kuwait.
Very cool.
And yeah, that's me.
For our international viewers, something I want to bring up to you guys. She is a figure skater in a country which is mostly desert. For our international listeners, take a moment to reflect on how cool that is and where we are in the world that now you can skate on ice in the middle of the desert. I want to get into all this the medical school stuff, okay? But I find it super fascinating that you're a figure skater. I've never met a figure skater. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so it's actually something new I've started. I started in 2nd year of medical school, and the reason was because I was feeling so overwhelmed and I needed like an outlet. I was a member of KUMSA, Kuwait Medical Student Association, and it was very like the work was very challenging. It was taking up a lot of time and energy, and I needed to just let it out and do something that's therapeutic and just a new hobby. I just needed something new. So since I've already done gymnastics and ballet in the past, I wanted something similar. And I found out on social media that there's a skating team. And it was something new. They meet like every week in the skating rink. And I was like, okay, let me try and get in.
Social media, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool because I was just wondering, like, how did you even find out about this?
It was a random post, like, on the Explore page. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and see what happens. So I went on the day that they usually meet. And I talked to the supervisor. And it was, I remember, in the middle of the skating season. Like, it was March or something. So when I talked to her that I'd like to join in. And before that, I prepared myself. Like, I bought new skates. I tried to train myself, like learn some moves so that I won't be an absolute beginner. So I was ready and prepared.
Wait, so it was self-taught mostly, or?
Yeah, in the beginning I was self-taught.
Really?
Like, opened YouTube videos, and
Interesting.
you can learn everything from YouTube and from just taking time. So
So
Yeah.
are you saying that you're considering dropping out of med school and then just watching YouTube videos? See, look, the fear. Yeah, go on.
So yeah, and so when I came, she told me it's the middle of the season and you can't join now. You have to wait till September. It's like, okay. But then when I was like going out of the rink, I was like, no, I want to try again and talk to the coach because I didn't want to wait all of these months. I talked to the coach and I said, can you see me? And I worked on my skills. I already know how to skate well. Can you just see me? And if you're okay, I joined the team. And she saw and she's like, okay, khas, you can join in. Yes, and it was actually something like very good because that summer was the first time that they did a training camp abroad, and I got to join in, and it was.
Oh, so you went
like,
abroad? Oh, cool.
Yeah, this was the first of many training camps that they did, but it was very special. So I got to know the team, and I got to learn so many things in such a like small period of time. So everything was perfect, and then I just joined permanently with the team, and
so now you're in the Kuwait national team. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how this national team works. Do you guys do you go to the Olympics? Do you how does it work?
Okay, so this is our end goal, of course. We started first by going to training camps to level up, and we have weekly trainings at the club, on ice and off ice trainings, because now since
off ice?
Yeah, there's like something called on ice and off ice. Off ice is where you practice the jumps and the spins and
so it's not like skating on the sand or anything?
No.
Okay.
But you have like a spinning board and you like replicate the jumps off ice so that you can do them on ice. It's very like important to have both. So we have the weekly trainings and the camps, and then we have national competitions and international competitions. International competitions, we've went with a few, one in Dubai. Now, as the sports club is expanding and there are more skaters and more coverage of the club. For example, we had the opportunity. One of the skaters had the opportunity to join the Youth Olympics last year. So it's slowly expanding, and they're slowly providing opportunities for us to compete abroad, but it's a slow process. But this is how most sports federations start. They start small, and so yeah, we're having opportunities, but it depends also on the schedule of the skaters. So for example, for me, I got to compete, but sometimes the competitions are at the same time as my exams, or they just are not I can't do them with my schedule, my medical school schedule, so I missed out on some. But that's okay.
How does it
you
feel
give and
though?
take.
Because when we were talking, I forgot which episode number. I think episode 3. I'm not sure. With Dr. Ghanim Al-Hashash and also Dr. Bassam Al-Mulla. When we were talking about their outside pursuits, they were bodybuilding, and then for Ghanima it was Pilates. They treat it almost like a second job.
Right.
Would you say that's a level of dedication you have?
Yeah.
Really?
It is. I treat it as one of my priorities.
Really?
But it does need to take a backseat sometimes, because medical school and education will stay as the first one. But I say it's good to be flexible. Sometimes it will be a priority for a small period of time, like the first one. But you just need to juggle them both, and because some sports, they require a lot of time and mental energy even.
Yes.
So if I don't give them much thought, like the figure skating, you need to be entirely focused and concentrated in always improving your skills, improving your posture, improving everything in order to be just good enough in figure skating. If you stop skating for a while, even for 2 weeks, you regress and you lose so many skills. So it is like a second job. You always feel like you need to be on top.
And so, but for you yourself, do you ever put med school in the you sometimes prioritize figure skating?
Mostly no, but some days, yes. And it's not because I wanted to prioritize figure skating, but because it is also an outlet to relieve my stress and just to balance all of it. I give it priority because I need it in order to be for example, if I have an exam and I need to just take a break, I go skating instead of studying that day only, one of the days that I was studying. And to me, it doesn't mean that I am forgetting about my studies. It means that I'm relieving my stress, and I'm trying to just recharge.
You're doing something synergistically.
Yes. And so the next day I'll be studying much better than if I just sometimes the longer you study doesn't mean that you're achieving as
100%.
much as. Yeah.
Actually, I just experienced this. I think it was yesterday, where I realized that because I'm right now studying for some of my exams for specialty training, and I was realizing that I was spending a lot of time studying, but it was less fruitful than me actually breaking up my studying into different chunks of the day.
Yes. Yeah.
So sometimes the sprint is not actually.
You get burnt out.
100%.
You put too many hours.
I don't know about you. I fall asleep.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
it happens.
See,
you need
fall asleep right on the keyboard and now hit the mic.
Mm.
Now, just so we can get a bit of an idea how busy and the time commitment that this requires, how much time a week do you spend figure skating?
So it depends on the clerkship that I'm going through at the time in med school, which rotation I'm doing. For example, right now I have more time. So during the week I go to maybe 1 to 2 trainings. It depends. Like when I was in second year and third year, I used to go to more trainings because I had more time. But I go to maybe once or twice a week. At times when it's exam season, there are weeks where I can't go to the rink because I'm busy studying. So it's very it differs week by week, and that's one of the drawbacks, because a lot of the other skaters, they don't have their schedule isn't chaotic. Everything is just the same every week and every month, so they can get into a routine. It's harder for me. Even when I'm training off ice, I'm going for runs in Shahid Park, for example, to just the stamina. Even this, I can't put in a routine because أكيد when you're working, sometimes the schedule is different. You have to be 7 a.m. in the hospital, sometimes 6, sometimes 8. Yeah. So everything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is a challenge by itself. Is that you're trying to schedule what to do and at what time. Yeah. So
you're constantly playing with the schedule.
Yes. Yeah. It's too flexible. Yeah.
But okay. Would you say that right now skating for you is a necessity at this point?
I can live without it, but it's an important part of my life. It's something that's part of, let's say, my identity. Cut. شنو كان سؤالك؟
I wouldn't even cut that. That's gold. I love it.
I love blooper, but
so
identity.
Anyways, talking about identity.
Did you just say?
I'm just messing with you. Oh God, this is the fun part. Side note for everyone watching: this is part of the thing that I love about podcasts, is that it's very chill. It's not like when I went on KTV, and I remember the stress I felt there was so much more because I'm like,
it's live, bad.
It's live, exactly. Because I was like,
where there are so many cameramen and
here it's
this is more chill,
definitely more chill. Anyways, back to identity.
Back to it.
So you'd say that skating is now part of your identity. And okay, but when I mean with it being a necessity, do you think that if you didn't have skating, you wouldn't be able to minimize your stress in the most effective way? So I mean, if you didn't have skating in your life, do you think that you'd be able to manage your stress as effectively? I'll give you an example for me. Some of my hobbies, I would say that they are essential to me, and it's I cannot have this hobby out of my life because it will genuinely affect the way that I perform. Would you say that about skating?
I guess yes, but also if I didn't have it in my life, I could choose another hobby that can, let's say, replace it.
Okay.
Sorry, figure skating, but
I respect the honesty. I respect the honesty.
Yeah, I love it. I can't imagine life without it. But what I mean is that it's just important for me to have another thing other than just studying.
Okay.
So it's important for to me to have something that I can move my body in, that I can, while I'm doing it, I forget everything, and it's like, when you're skating, you forget everything. It's like just you and the ice. And so that's why it relieves a lot of stress. But a lot of sports are like that. When you start doing them, the moment that you're doing them, it's just very therapeutic. So as long as there's something like that in my life, it's good. So if it's not figure skating, it will be something else, like running or just any other sport or any other hobby, any other art hobby or artistic or
It's
reading,
interesting that you
like
bring that up, actually, because I did a research project in when I was in medical school, and what I looked at was the effect of coloring. Do you know mandalas?
No.
They're like I'm sure if I showed it to you, they're like it's a pattern where like you have like a central like figure and then kind of lines around it. Anyways, you're coloring in these patterns, right? I looked at what is the effect of coloring that on anxiety. I did a literature review on it, and there was a lot of theories because a lot of people said coloring in itself relieves anxiety.
Right. Yeah.
And the reason why is because flow. Flow is when your mind is fully engaged, and I believe there are like there's different determinants. I need to look at the research again to be able to tell you exactly of what determines flow, and entering that flow state is a big thing that helps relieve anxiety. So when you mention figure skating, and that you're forgetting everything else, what I'm imagining is you're just in this flow state.
Right.
That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
So would you advise other medical students to seek out a hobby that puts them in a flow state?
Yes, definitely. So you articulated that very well. So you're fully present while doing it, so you're in the flow. And yeah, I do encourage all students to find something that puts them in that state, whether it's something artistic, a sport, anything. I feel like it's a vital part of their health, and their health will in turn affect their studies and will affect their life.
Now I want to kind of press you a little bit on your dedication here to figure skating. So you said that you have to treat it kind of like a second job, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the paradox for me. Any other job brings stress inherently. You know what I mean? Like even with me, with this podcast, there does come a level of stress that is included when I'm doing another thing that I'm dedicating almost like a second job, and yet it's paradoxical because you're doing this to relieve stress, but it comes with stress.
That's true.
Yeah?
I guess you can say it's good stress. Yeah, some stress makes you work harder and makes you just more motivated. So I guess figure skating is more towards that type of stress. Of course, at times the stress is too much. For example, when we have a upcoming competition, I'm very stressed because I just need to make sure that my routine is good, my skills are up to par. So it is stressful, and sometimes it's too much. But I guess you just need to find a balance. When it gets too stressful and you have other priorities that you need your full mindset on them, you just need to take a pause because it's not going anywhere. You can go back. For example, if you have an exam and the stress is too much, it's now like not beneficial. You just take a pause because in the end, you do have a medical career, and if that's your first priority, it's always sometimes the skating or any sport needs to take a backseat. Right. So you just concentrate on your studies, finish your exam. You can always go back. And sure, maybe you'll lose some of your skills or you'll feel like you regress. But that's okay. Like, as long as you have a pace and you're moving forward, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say I'm a person who says, no, you know what? I love my medical career and I want to be a good doctor. But you know what? No, this sport that I'm doing is my number one priority. And then my studying, that comes second. I want to pass my exams. I don't necessarily want to be, because we have this grind culture, Right. Everybody, I want to be the best and the best. No, but I've come across a few people who have said, no, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be the best doctor. This sport or hobby is my true passion, and medicine is my career. What do you think?
Well, they do have a point. I guess there's a fine line between you need to make sure that you're a safe doctor. maybe because now I'm in medical school, so I just want to make sure that I'm touching all my bases and that I'm just getting the best out of it. So it is still like the first priority, but I get where they're coming from. They need the sport to just fulfill some in their life, and يعني, they don't feel like medical school. Look, I don't feel like medical school should be your entire life. I see it as just part of your life, and some people like to have it as like their life.
Is that healthy though?
I don't think it's healthy, but sometimes people just need to see what works for them. Sometimes that's healthy for some people. They like to just focus on one thing and dedicate all their time to it. And while I see that it doesn't work for me, I guess it works for some people. You can see them. They have all their time committed to, for example, medical school, and it works for them. But it doesn't mean that everybody has to be like that. And if someone wants to have other things in his life, why not? As long as he's a safe doctor, he's being a good doctor to his patients, I don't see a problem with that. Yeah.
That I totally agree. And the thing that I wanted to really touch up on there is the fact that everybody's different. Everybody has a different approach.
Yeah.
Some people want to, medicine be their life. Some people don't. And I don't think that makes you a better or worse doctor because, like you said, in the end, what really matters is your safety.
Right. Yeah.
If you pass your exams, you're treating your patients with respect and you're treating them properly according to guidance, you're good.
Yes. I agree.
So going back to figure skating, one thing I wanted to ask you was about time. How do you exactly literally like hours of the day? What do you do?
Okay. So again, it depends on the rotation.
Okay.
Okay. So when I wake up, sometimes it depends so much on the rotation. But okay. So sometimes there are rotations where when I wake up, I have time to, for example, go take a walk and. Okay, I'm going into details, but that's how it goes. I take a walk, for example, in Shahid Park. It's next to my house, so or I do some sort of exercise at home, because that's the only time that I have before the chaos starts of the day. Then after work, when I come back, I eat at home, and then I start studying, and then, for example, we have trainings mostly like at 4 to 6. So then I go to the ice rink and I train. And then I either come back and finish up my studying, or I study somewhere, because sometimes you study well when there are other people studying, so at a library or at a cafe. So it's just a matter of to me, in my mind, it just works for me that I just need to make sure that I tick off several tasks during the day. It doesn't matter when.
Do you decide the day of, or is it something that you
For me, I decide the day off.
Oh,
yeah.
This is interesting because most people that I've spoken to have these outside pursuits usually are very I have to do this at this time, and I've set it quite in advance. It's interesting that you're saying you're flexible with it.
Yeah, to me, I just don't know how to plan, because it's not that I don't plan. I just like to plan the day off, because to me, I have more of a the goal is mostly for this month what I'm going to do, not every day. So for example, if I have a goal that I need to study this much for this month, and I have to, for example, do this project this month, I just choose the days where I'm going to work mostly on the studying. There are days where I won't study, I'm just taking a break. I guess I just plan the day off. It works for me.
Now, okay, so you're now a medical student, right? And again, this episode is more geared towards medical students. But do you think that any of this is going to change? You're going to be a trainee next year, correct? So you're going to be a trainee yet next year.
Yeah.
Do you think that this approach is sustainable?
To me, it will be. But maybe as a trainee, the schedule will be better. So
better.
Better, not in terms that it will be easier, but it will be more the timings. Yeah, the timings are fixed. And then, of course, you have the on-calls. But the on-calls, I won't treat them as days.
Yeah, you lose.
They're just...
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Just on-call day.
Oh, you think it's a day? No.
It's 2 days.
Yeah, because essentially, the night before the on-call, you got to sleep only a little bit. Okay? so that you can be able to take a, like, if you have some time in between or anything, like, so you can be able to nap during the afternoon, you know? And then the day of the on-call, you're of course on-call. Then the day after that,
Your post-call.
your post-call, which means you are asleep.
Yeah, that's true. It's
So
gonna be tough.
the dream's getting shattered. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I'm already like expecting it.
Yeah.
Not to shatter, but it's gonna be a step down. But that's okay. So I guess going forward for trainee year, I'll have to plan mostly like my week instead of day by day. The most important thing for me is there's a study time, a set time, and I don't go for like a goal of like, I don't go
You're good.
adjusting the mic. I don't go for a goal more than like 3 hours of studying per day, because to me it's just then tiring, and then I don't study well. It's just focused, short, but consistent. So every day.
So limits as well. That's another tip you give.
I set a lot of limits, because once I go over them, it's just not productive to me.
So things we've covered so far, just tips for medical students. Number 1, set your own limits.
Yeah.
Don't go over.
Don't compare yourself to others.
Ooh,
it's important that you just see what works for you. So
Cool.
the first few years of medical school, you're going to be experimenting. And then you'll find out what works for you. For example, as you can see, some people, they can't plan the day, like every day, like by the day.
I cannot. I have to know what my day looks like the day before.
So yeah,
100%.
and that works for you.
Yeah.
So it's important for the people to find out what works for them. So I have a friend who needs to plan out like the whole week and the whole month, like every day, what subjects she's going to study, and that works perfectly for her. So she should just continue that.
Yeah.
Depends on the person, that they will experiment and find out what works for them. So other than the limits, you need to also have like general goals of what you want to do like in that specific year. So for example, because a lot of students, they're continuously stressing over, for example, their extracurriculars, their research projects, their electives, what they want to do in the future, and they just stress over it and overwhelm themselves instead of like actually putting it into action.
Right.
So I do encourage them to like open your CV every year, like during the summer, and see like the general look, because a lot of students, they just go to every event, because the student associations, they have a lot of activities, so they just go to every event and it just builds up. But it doesn't matter how many, what matters is the quality, and like what type, what are you striving for, what are you going for. So when they look over their CV, they're gonna see the gaps, what they want to fill this year. And then just keep in mind like the months that they want to focus on specific things. For example, they want, and set limits, 1 research project for the next 2 years. They don't have to be like too aspirational, because then maybe they'll get too stressed and then not do anything.
So I like that tip about putting limits and being aware, because I think all medical students and doctors fall into this trap of wearing a very, I don't know if the word is cutthroat, but very intense career.
True.
Everybody wants to be the best. Best. Enunciation problems. Everyone wants to be the best. Everyone is trying to push and push and push, and you don't want to burn out. What was it? The myth of Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun and then ended up just burning and falling down. Same thing.
Right comparison.
So, in terms of how you deal with stress, there's one stressor I wanted to ask you about, because it's a stressor I experience. I often feel guilt when I have something outside of medicine, and this was also as a medical student, this is not only now. When I have something outside of medicine, I often go, I feel guilty, I should be studying right now.
Right, yeah.
Do you get that?
I do. I used to get it more before, but as long as you're choosing mindfully what activities you're doing for rest, and for example, some people, they're just passing time by watching TV shows, for example. Guilty, I do it too. But as long as you're mindfully choosing that this is my time to relax, or my time to do another activity. It doesn't have to be that. It will help you to not feel that guilt because you're choosing that time for rest, and because you know and you remind yourself that you need a time of rest in order to be able to like perform better and like function as a medical student. So I guess that's what helped me, is that I'm choosing times to relax, and I remind myself that it's important. And it's not even just something for me to just enjoy my life. It's actually like needed. Like I need that time in order to be a better student. So
Do you ever think that maybe some people look at you differently for having something outside of work? Like in the how can I put this? Like imagine a bunch of people are talking, and then they look at you and you're talking about, oh, I'm in med school and I also do this, and then they're just like, oh, how are you in med school? How do you have time for this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that something that ever has popped up?
They are they do, like they are confused. Not confused. They're just like, oh, you have time for that? They're like, that's the biggest question that pops. It's like, how do you have time to do both?
Yeah. I think it's there's a prior. I think we're entering a bit of a shift mentality-wise with medicine, and on a global level, where we are starting to accept that maybe medicine shouldn't be all-consuming, and maybe we should have things outside of our careers, just for our health.
I do agree, yeah. And because, as you mentioned, like previously about the burnout, it's so true, and it happens to a lot of students, including me. It's like, okay, this is a bit vulnerable, but like in the beginning, in the first few years of medical school, I was very active in medical school. So other than my studies, I used to like organize a lot of like campaigns, like events, and just extracurriculars in general, like, and also research projects, and just all over the place. So although it made me feel like I'm like being productive and doing a lot of things and adding to my CV, it did cause me to burn out. Like by fifth year, I was so burnt out. So I like fifth year, all of it was just like a year of rest for me. I mostly just studied and did the sports on the side, and I didn't do much other than that. And some people were like, I remember they were like, oh, you don't go, like you don't organize events anymore, like what happened? I'm like, I'm just resting. And although I'm not I'm not regretful that I worked in the first few years, because it's really like paid off.
Yeah.
And now I don't need to even work that hard anymore, not on my studies, but on the extracurriculars, because I already built so much, and I don't need to. But it did, if it was less intense, maybe I wouldn't have burnt out so intensely in the middle of medical school. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that balance, as we're saying, is important, and don't be intense or like work too much on either like side, on your studies, nor are your like on your extracurriculars, and also your outside like
Do you
hobbies.
think there's any warning signs you would advise somebody if like let's say an extracurricular is getting too much?
You mean like when do they know like that they have to stop?
Yeah.
When they see that it's consuming their time and their mental energy to the point that they can't study.
Okay.
Because sometimes, for example, they're doing an extracurricular and they just can't stop thinking about like the next tasks, and it's a bit hard for them, and then they suffer like study-wise. And because they're suffering study-wise, it adds stress on organizing whatever they're doing. So I guess what I encourage them is to ask for help.
Right.
And like don't be shy to ask for help. Like I know a lot of students, they feel like, yes, I am capable of doing it myself, which they are, but they feel like it's not okay to ask for help, and like needs needs someone to help them. They feel like, no, I should handle the stress, I should handle all this workload, when no, you have people around you that can help you out, lessen the load, and that way you won't be like burnt out by what you're doing.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's good to be mindful of if you're doing something to avoid burnout, don't
Yeah.
end up being more burnt out.
Yeah, and choose your workload. Just because someone can juggle like 3 projects at once doesn't mean that you have to do the same. It's just what you do, you, and be proud of that.
Yeah.
And that way you can be consistent, because if you don't, you'll just suffer.
And you know, one thing that I want to remind you as a medical student now is that one thing that people are really going to like when you're applying for your boards and everything, they're going to like seeing these outside pursuits. It's funny how we think that we need to make our lives all medicine, but in fact, people who are accepting you into specialty training, who, let's say, they're the ones who are judging your medical career, don't want someone who's only obsessed with medicine. They want a well-rounded individual, you know, who has in hospital and hospital slash university pursuits and outside. And speaking about university, I wanted to ask you about the university and their role in supporting you in your extracurriculars. Do you think they play a role? And maybe less so with figure skating, because I imagine there's no ice rink in KU. But in general, like extracurricular wise, what do you think is the role of the medical school in that?
Yeah. Okay, so if I'd be honest, so far they don't really have much of a role in the physical like aspects of like the physical well-being. Like there's no sports or wellness.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because in Manchester we did have like, you know, there was an ice hockey society.
Oh, nice.
Actually, I don't know if it was ice hockey or floor hockey. Anyways, sports, you know, there were different
Yeah,
sports.
and I
there was
do
debate,
feel like
all
it's
of it.
beneficial, like it's something that should be there. But it's not, unfortunately. And if there is something, it's under the Kuwait Medical Student Association. So they are organize sometimes like sports things and like just events to like for student well-being. But I do hope that in the future they start to establish that under like the faculty and not under the students association. I do feel like, for example, at least to have a gym like or a wellness center in the faculty, so that people are encouraged to just move their body, and from that they can start having like teams or programs for each sport. Maybe under the Kuwait University, like under the umbrella of Kuwait University, maybe there are teams, but everything like doesn't reach KU Medicine. Like KU Medicine is always like its own planet.
Okay.
Even like events, we're always on our own. So it's something good and bad.
Okay.
But yeah, so for sports, if there was, maybe we don't even know about it. So.
But what do you think, as somebody who's now engaging in sports outside of university, what do you think would be beneficial to you as a medical student to have this offered by your university?
It would be good in terms that I'll be like, not endorsed, but supported by my med school. I hope in the future students will have that opportunity, because it would help them be supported, so that maybe it will, I don't know.
Do you think it'd help with time management at least?
It will.
Yeah.
It's good that your university sees you as that you have this pursuit. So for example, it would be good, for example, because in 5th year I had a training camp abroad for skating with the team. And so they sent like this formal letter that can she like go abroad for this 1 week, and they just said you can't. And it was during my community medicine rotation, and that was online, so I could continue online while I'm doing it. And while I do understand their point of view, they just want to make sure their students are attending, and they're just trying to show that it's a priority. You can tell that. But I guess if there was a team under KU Medicine, there would be more support, and we would find like a midpoint between us, and just try to find a compromise in order to support the students both educationally and like in their other pursuits.
I think this is a really interesting point, because for me in high school, we had a lot of extracurriculars in the school, and sometimes this extracurriculars would include even so far as to travel.
Right.
I went on a service trip to Nepal. I went to The Hague for MUN. there was a lot of things to do besides just studying as a high school student. And I think, for myself at least, it was essential to my development as a person.
It made you evolve like into a better
Well-rounded.
a better person.
Exactly. And why do we not want that of our doctors?
That's true.
Aren't we making physicians that should be, really well-rounded to better treat their patients?
I agree, and they already have like this one step forward. Like they support students, for example, in the debate teams, in conferences abroad for medical students.
Really?
So it is a step in the right direction. It's just it would be good to expand more to include all these other activities.
Yeah,
it would be good.
Because definitely, like, if exercise isn't a part of wellness, then what is?
Exactly.
This is it's a really interesting point to bring up about the med schools. Now, beyond that, do you have any plans going into now as a doctor, because you're going to be shifting your mindset now? Like, let's notice how throughout this discussion we were saying, how did you gauge your time, and like that, if something's taking too much or not, and usually you'd say my studies. Pretty soon you're not going to be studying. I mean, you're always studying. You have boards and everything. But the dynamic is different because there's less of that, oh, if I don't study, I lose my degree. So do you have any like thoughts of how you're going to integrate skating into your life in the future?
I feel like this is a question that I should ask you. So do you feel like when you're working, sometimes you still need to study, right? But not as much. So for you, when you get back home after working, do you feel like you can just do whatever you want the rest of the day, or are there like commitments for your work that you need to continue or work on?
Well, first, I'd like to just mention how you are the first guest, and I applaud this, who's hit the Uno reverse card for me on this podcast.
I'm sorry.
No, I applaud it, and in fact, I hope to bring Uno cards in the future in case anyone does this again, so I can put the Uno. I think that'd be a good prop to add. Okay, so going back to your question, sorry. So your question was, how has my dynamic changed kind of with my not curriculars, like things outside of medicine?
Yeah. Do you feel like when you finish your, like at 2 p.m. or whenever you do finish, can you spend the rest of your day like with your other commitments, or are there like ongoing things that you need to do for the next day? If it's not studying, is there like something else that takes up your mind?
So the truth about it for me is that I have a lot of things going on besides the podcast and besides the hospital and besides even studying. I have a few things going on because, and I've discussed this quite a few times with some of my colleagues, and it was really interesting. Once you're working, your outlook on the prioritization of life kind of differs. So let's say, for example, when you look at social obligations, as a student looking at social obligations, you're like, oh, I'll have the rest of my life to socialize. I'll have the rest of my life to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Once you're working, that is your life. You've entered adulthood. I mean, you've been an adult for a while, but I mean,
but
more of, yeah. And so the threat is totally different. So when I miss out on a day of studying, I'm not sitting here concerned I'm going to fail my exam and lose my degree. My threat is more like, I'm going to delay a year maybe in going for my specialty, for example. And I'm not saying that's not a big threat. I'm just saying that it's different when the other things start to have bigger priorities in your life. So that's the first thing that I'd like to clarify. As in, that's changed for me. Because definitely my priorities changed absolutely after.
Right.
That doesn't mean that the stress goes away. The stress is still there. And I mentioned this actually, I think in my KTV interview. You got to be comfortable with the stress. I think that's the biggest definer in how you're going to be able to go forward, is if you get comfortable with that level of anxiety, and you mentioned this earlier, good stress. Find that peak level of stress, because there is a peak level.
Right, where it's your friend, like.
Exactly. You notice how in the summers, if you're sitting and you're not studying, you just kind of get lazy
Right.
in everything you do. Even the way you go out, your friends would tell you, "Oh, you want to go out to, I don't know, something 15 minutes away." You're like, "Oh, I'm not in the mood. Mali khulq."
You just need like more routine.
Yes.
Like you lost it.
All of this works together. You know what I mean? So there is that teetering back and forth, you know. But you have to find for yourself by trial and error, underline error. You need to find that peak balance, and it's okay to fail. And the nice thing, the nice thing after you graduate, and this is something to really look forward to, is the fact that the threat of losing your degree is not there. Of course, as long as you're being a safe doctor, but it's such a nice feeling to maybe skip one day of studying and not feel that overwhelming guilt of, I wasted 4 years of my life. So that's how it's changed for me. This has been our first Uno reverse card on the Doctor's Brew.
But it's a nice outlook, yani.
Thank you.
We learn from each other.
100%. And that's exactly what the Doctor's Brew is about, is learning from everybody across all the ranks in the medical specialties. Because I think even though this episode is really geared towards medical students, I think plenty of doctors, trainees, and who knows, even maybe consultants alike can tune in, or at the very least people who are interested in skating in Kuwait. Well, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to ask. I just want to thank you again for being such a great guest.
It was an honor.
And thank you for being the first medical student on the podcast. We're kind of broadening right now our reach. And I hope to everyone that listened that this was useful to them. So really, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And any final words you want to leave us with?
This is very pressure. Oh my God. خلاص, this is the conclusion of our podcast.
Oh, that was so great. Just to let you guys know what happened. The mic got tipped over. So I think that's a good cue out to the ending there. That's the last sip of coffee for the day. A final special thank you to our guest. And tune in next time.
Thank you for having us.
Hope you all enjoyed this episode of The Doctor's Brew. New episodes to listen to with a cup of coffee coming your way every Sunday on YouTube and Spotify. And be sure to follow us on Instagram for all the latest updates. See you next time.